Okay, Namaste everyone. So today we have Kanishk with us, who has a number of map-based history lessons that he would like to share with us. These are a lot of things that he has researched at his end, and he has painstakingly made these maps. Obviously, I am going to ask maybe even very silly or basic questions, but Kanishk here is going to be kind enough to entertain them. So, Kanishk, over to you. Uh, where
Uh,
do we want to start our history lesson from today?
First of all, I would like to thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here, Varunji. And I think I will be starting from Chalcolithic India, Chalcolithic period,
Okay.
and its relation with the Rigvedic philology. These are a few maps which I made. And by the way, I have an Instagram handle named the Hindu Mapper where I upload these maps. I have over 15,000 followers. The page primarily focuses on Indian history, archaeology, and Indology. But these days, I'm posting a lot on the Indian Bronze Age. So my special focus is on the Indian Bronze Age, which encompasses the Indus Valley civilization, the Rigvedic culture, the post-Harappan cultures, and also the pre-Harappan cultures. So I'm a proponent of the Neolithic Chalcolithic theory, according to which the Indus Valley civilization was not a pre-Indo-Aryan or a pre-Vedic civilization, but was rather an Indo-Aryan or a Vedic civilization, right? Old Indo-Aryan speaking civilization. And the so-called Proto-Indo-Aryans or the Indo-European people were already present in the Indian subcontinent in the Chalcolithic period. So, where should I begin with, Varunji?
I think you could start maybe in a chronological order because let's assume someone who's a complete newbie doesn't understand terms like Chalcolithic.
Okay, so the map which you see here is the map of the Hakra ware culture and the Mehergarh Neolithic. So Neolithic basically means Chalcolithic. Chalcolithic is the time period when humans were primarily using copper, right? When copper technology was prevalent and when bronze wasn't invented. So this was the time period when humans were already into agriculture, but they developed chalcolithic or copper weapons. So this is the ancient archaeological culture of the Indus Saraswati region. You can see in the map.
Mhm.
This is the Hakra ware culture, and this is the Mehergarh Neolithic, which happened to be the parent culture of this culture, as per the recent studies, right? As per the archaeological estimates, one can say this.
Got it.
Various sites that you can see on the map, on this map, such as Rakhigadi, uh, Giravar, Bhirana, Kalibangan, Kanveriwala, and Harappa. These were the sites which flourished on the banks of river, Indus and Saraswati, the whole Indus Saraswati region. And these people were the ones who were speaking the Proto-Indo-Iranian languages, Proto-Indo-Iranian dialects that gave rise to both the Iranian languages, Persian, the Scythian languages, as well as the Indo-Aryan languages, such as Sanskrit, various Prakrits, you know, various Middle Indo-Aryan languages, and which eventually evolved into new Indo-Aryan languages. And
Got
it
it.
flourished roughly from 4600 BC because the earliest site is in this region, is Rakhigarh, which dates back to 4500 BCE, and it later became the largest Harappan site. So it was basically the birthplace of the Indo-Iranian culture. That you can say that.
So, if I may ask a question here on the previous image itself,
Yeah,
Kanishji,
yeah.
how do you explain or interpret the fact that in this Hakraware culture, the oldest point is actually the easternmost point rather than the westernmost point, as in it is Rakhigadi as of now, which is the oldest site for this region, as opposed to let's say Harappa or I think I see Ganveriwala, if I'm saying that right.
Ganveriwala.
Ganveriwala.
It's which
So,
yeah, yeah.
what is the archaeological explanation, or what are your thoughts on that matter?
Well, the archaeological explanation is that we find Hakraware potteries and various copper artifacts which have been carbon dated to 4500 BCE. So it all began around 4500 to 600 BCE, And then around 3300 BCE, Rakhigari turned into a vast, agricultural site, a near an early Bronze Age rural center, basically, right? And around 2600 BCE, it evolved into a vast urban center, which was almost twice the size of Mohenjo-daro,
Which
as
is
per the recent
unfortunate, right?
excavation
Because
reports.
even
Yeah,
today I see a lot of these Western sites and their channels. They keep focusing
mm,
just on Harappa and Mohenjo-daro all the time. For
yeah,
them, Indus Valley civilization is just these two cities. Even though I think excavations have revealed much larger cities on the Indian side of
yeah,
yeah, I think this map really helps.
yeah. And that's why I'm showing this map. People do not realize that most of the Harappan sites thrived on the banks of River Saraswati. Even some of the largest and even the oldest sites, such as Bhirana and Rakhigadi, here. You have Bhirana, you have Rakhigadi, and even Girawad, which dates back to 4000 BC. So yeah, so if you see this map, here is the trajectory of River Indus. And just
Mm,
compare the number of sites present on the banks of River Indus and on the banks of River Saraswati. You
yeah.
see a massive difference, right? And that is the reason we call this civilization Indus Saraswati civilization, because Saraswati River was the main river of this civilization. Most of the sites thrived on the banks of this river, including Rakhigadi, which happens to be the largest site, and Bhirana, which is assumed to be the oldest Harappan site.
I find it interesting that Gujarat region, Saurashtra region also has a very high concentration of settlements and
Yeah.
excavation. Is it just a case of the State Department there doing a better job of excavation, or due to some geographical or environmental reasons, we are able to find preserved sites better, or are there other theories? What are your thoughts here?
That's an interesting question. While it's true that the archaeological department, or whatever the one which is functioning there, uh, the sub department of the SI there in Gujarat has done a remarkable job. I think better than what Pakistan is doing, or what is being done here in this region of Haryana and Eastern Punjab.
Mhm.
That said, it is also important to note that the oldest Harappan sites were from this region, right? This region
Haryana.
of Saraswati and
Haryana.
Drishavati.
Mhm.
And this is the core Rigvedic region, which is hailed as Vara Prithviya in the third mandal of the Rigveda, which means navel of the earth, or the best place on the earth, which was the region where these Proto-Indo-Aryans, or the early Rigvedic Aryans, lived.
Mhm.
And from this region, they expanded into east and west, colonizing the entire Indus Saraswati plains.
Mhm.
And then all these regional cultures, basically, which existed prior to 2600 BCE, they all coalesced and resulted in the formation of the Indus Valley civilization and the mature Harappan civilization.
So, can you explain what are the other colors? So, I think we have a green, which
All right.
is.
These are different cultures which were contemporary to the Harappan civilization. In order to understand that, I have to show this map to you.
Mhm.
So this is a map of early Harappan cultures which flourished from 3300 BCE to 2600 BCE. You can see this golden Sothi Siswal culture. So this was essentially the culture of the Purus. This was the archaeological culture which flourished in this region of river Saraswati. This is Saraswati and this is Drishadhari, tributary of Saraswati.
Yeah. How does an archaeologist distinguish one culture from the other? So, like for example, here you're
Yeah.
saying that this is a distinct culture, it's not the same as this culture or these settlements. So, what is typically used as a marker for that? If you can
Yeah,
also
it's basically
explain.
the pottery which we get. So the Sothi Siswal culture pottery is different from the Koch DG pottery, although both the pottery types, both of them descended from the Hakra ware
Mhm.
pottery. So even in this map, you see this culture, Hakra ware culture. It is characterized by a common pottery which was spread across this region. And this pottery culture gave rise to these two great cultures, the Koch DG culture and the Sothi Siswal culture.
Mhm.
Similarly, the Sothi Siswal culture gave rise to the mature Harappan civilization. This thing, the red thing which you see on the map,
Mhm.
the extent of the mature Harappan civilization. This is from 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. The first map is from 4600 BCE roughly to 3300 BCE, though it continues till 2800 BCE. And this is from 3300 BCE to 2600 BCE. So this is the early Bronze Age period. This is the Chalcolithic period, the one which you see
Mhm.
here, like the Hakra culture. Then this is the early Bronze Age period. Then this is the mature Harappan civilization when, when all these sites got urbanized.
Mm.
So this is characterized by uh, integrated pottery. I mean, one kind of pottery spread across this vast region,
Mhm.
and urbanization being the
Got it.
primary characteristic of the mature Harappan civilization.
Now, if I may ask another question here.
Sure.
Basically, the pottery is being used as a proxy for assuming they are different cultures, but
Yeah.
that's ultimately it's still an assumption, right? We are making an assumption that because the pottery is different, the people were different, but that
The
need not be true,
people.
perhaps.
The people were different, but they got diversified. Like I
Mm.
mentioned, that there was this one culture called the Hakraware culture. The
Mhm.
people from this culture spread across, they migrated. Like I
Yeah,
showed with these arrows, the Iranic
yeah.
people
Mm.
went this side, the Nuristanis went further northwards, and the
Mm.
Indo-Aryans southwards. So they migrated to these regions, and we see diversification of their culture.
Got it. And I think we should be careful not to use the word colonize, I think, because
Yeah.
there's always this
One
tendency
may say,
amongst
yeah.
people to, I mean, revert back to Aryan invasion theory and
Sense that these people originating from the Saraswati Drishadvati region spread the culture
of
there,
course, of
the
course.
Indo-Aryan culture
Got it. Yeah. I
there,
know.
the
I just
Vedic.
wanted to clarify that. Also,
Yeah,
if I can ask, what are the purple dots? What culture is that? Is that considered
in this
distinct?
map, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this was the Kulli culture of Balochistan. It was
Mm.
likely Iranian-speaking culture. We do not know. We do not have inscriptions, but from reasonable estimates, we can say that these people were speaking Iranian languages,
Mm.
right?
And I find it
Because
interesting that there are some red dots even at the furthest end of those purple, right? So it's
yeah.
like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have to show this map. You know, you know. So this is the map of both the Indus Valley civilization and Helmand Valley civilization, and this area was of the early Indo-Aryans, which included primarily the Rigvedic Aryans. And there were also Indo-Aryan people who were not Vedic Aryans. We even find their references in Vedic texts. We find references to these the Yadus, Turvasus, who were not Vedic, but they belonged to a culture that was a sister culture of the Vedic culture. Are you
Mhm.
getting my point?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And the collective term for all these people is Indo-Iranian, which includes Iranian. And Indo-Aryan is specifically for the ones. Indo-Aryans are basically Indo-Iranians minus the
Mm.
Iranians and the Nuristani people, the other branches of
I can't help but
Aryan people.
notice that the region that you mark along the coast of Balochistan is also the
Yeah.
region where even today I think you have Hindu communities, right? I think you even have Devi, one of
Yeah.
the
The Hinglaj temple,
yes,
yeah.
Himla Devi. So I find it very interesting that there is that continuity right from this map in this period all the way into what we see today, despite demographic changes. I think the Hindu population is still in those areas that you have highlighted along the coast.
Well, yes, but it is also vital to distinguish between the modern Baloch people and these ancient peoples because,
Mm.
the Baloch communities migrated to this region of Balochistan recently in the medieval period.
Medieval period, is
So,
it? Mm.
yeah, so there's not a direct connection between these ancient communities of Balochistan and the later Baloch immigrants because they came much later and they brought the Baloch language, which is quite close to Kurdish language of Western Iran and Kurdistan region.
Got it.
Okay. So back to the chronology. Let me summarize everything again. After around 3000 BC, 3300 BC, from 3300 BC onwards, this was the picture where we had different archaeological cultures. So these people were one. They were not different. I mean, there were cultural variations, just like we today have, like we have Marathis, Punjabis, Gujaratis, Oriya, Kashmiris, etc. Similar was the case here. So the people living in this region, Sothi Siswal culture, were the Vedic Aryans, the so-called Vedic Aryans, the Rigvedic people, the early Rigvedic people. Now, this was the region of the Dasyus. The Dasyus were mentioned in the Rigveda, the Parshu, Prithu, and other tribes. I have another map. Wait a minute. Yeah, this one. So this shows all the early Rigvedic tribes which were living in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. You can see the Purus,
Mhm.
the Vedic Aryans. Shrikant Talagiri identified the Bharata Purus with the early Rigvedic Aryans. These were the Dasyus, the Pakta Bhalanas. These were primarily the ancestors of the Iranians,
Mhm.
the Parshu Parthavas, the Shivas, the Ailina Shimus, all that. They have identified them with the Port DG culture.
Mhm.
Then you have the Yadus and Turvasus who were living in inner parts of the Indian subcontinent.
If I may ask a question here again.
Sure.
So I see you've marked Dravidianic people in what is now Sindh and Saurashtra.
Yeah.
Is this an assumption, or on what basis are there any Vedic references which were used to conclude this? Because I know there's a lot of Tamil nationalism as well, which likes to believe that everything Vedic is actually Proto-Tamil or some kind of theory like that. But of course, the fact remains is that Sangam literature has no memory of people traveling all the way from Saraswati River all the way down south. So there is a gap there. But a lot of research and a lot of researchers have in the past also given a lot of weight to this kind of theory. There are various political or a number of
Okay.
reasons for this.
So the notion is that the Proto-Dravidian languages likely originated in this region. I've written a blog on this
Mhm.
because we also have genetic evidence of Iran Neolithic like ancestry, which was quite dominant in this whole region, the northwestern India, migrating to southwards, and we see this ancestry in various isolated Dravidian tribes such as Kota, Chenchu. Uh, you have Iroda tribe in Tamil Nadu,
Mhm.
many other tribes, even the Korgis, the Kodava people of Karnataka. So it's widespread there. And these people follow pastoralism, which actually originated in this region. Right. We find evidence of pastoralism in Chalcolithic Gujarat, in the Padri wear culture of Gujarat, which dates back to 3600 BC. So I've identified these people with Dravidians and the Proto-Dravidians. So Proto-Dravidians were essentially the people who were speaking dialects that later gave rise to Tamil, Kannada,
Mhm.
Telugu, Kota,
Mhm.
Chenchu, and various other Dravidian languages,
Yeah.
including Draudi.
I mean, at this point, I want to
Actually,
also.
my sorry to interrupt you in between. The main focus is not the Proto-Dravidian people.
No,
We
no, it's
discussed.
not. But I just want to address something here because I think a lot of people confuse linguistics with genetics. For example, today I think we have Ashwin, Varshita, you, and myself. We are spread across a geography where all of us are conversing in English. So
Sure.
linguistically, it's neither Indo-Aryan. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not an Indian language, right? But culturally, I would like to think we are coming from the same culture. So I think sometimes when we look at these maps, it's easy for people to confuse the linguistics with the culture. So just because there are Dravidianic people here doesn't mean that they weren't interacting or having influence from each other. So I think, I mean, I just thought given that this map is calling
Well,
that
I
out.
see modern civilization as an amalgamation of, yeah. Like Shrikant Talagiri mentioned that the current Indian culture or Hinduism fundamentally is the parliament of religions. So what he meant was that current Indian civilization, as we see today, is an amalgamation of various cultures that
Yeah.
existed in past. So they had different independent origins indeed, but they all, evolved, they all amalgamated and gave rise to this rich Indian civilization as we know. Like, for instance, the tribal religions of these tribes, which I mentioned, these Dravidian tribes.
Mm.
So there's a great difference. They do not do Vedic sacrifices. They do not speak Sanskrit. Their words are completely distinct from Sanskrit or Vedic, the
Mm.
so-called
Mm.
Indo-Aryan languages. But what we see is that they all coexisted, they all lived together, and they assimilated harmoniously. They amalgamated harmoniously, giving rise to this great Indian civilization. That's how the Indian civilization came into existence. And there are various stages of interaction. Like you mentioned, that these ancient people were definitely interacting with the Aryans. Yes, it's
Yeah.
true that they were interacting with the Aryans. In fact, we come across a lot of Proto-Dravidian words in the newer layer of the Rigveda,
Mhm.
right? In fact, we find reference to a priest who had a Dravidian name, Iribitham Kanva.
Name
Iribitham Kanva.
Kiribitham Kanva.
Kanva. Iribitham. Yeah, it's a typical Dravidian, Proto-Dravidian, one can say Proto-Dravidian name or late Proto-Dravidian name. We do not find certain such names in other Indo-European, texts.
Right.
So linguistically, it's purely Dravidian. Yeah. Genetically, if you see, the picture is more nuanced.
Mm.
People have been migrating and mixing with each other. So yes, they are inextricable. They are inseparable. Yeah. Okay. So continuing with the early to mature Harappan transition and what the Rigveda tell us, that the Vedic culture was concentrated to this region, and by around 2600 BC, the Vedic Aryans expanded into the western region, right? And this resulted in the integration the of various Harappan cultures, as you can see on this map. These three cultures here, these three cultures, the Kot Diji culture, the Sothi Siswal culture, and the Amrinal culture, they all integrated into a single civilization called the Indus Saraswati civilization around 2600 BC. And we also find references to seafaring, maritime activities, urban structures such as sadhas. These were ritual enclosures where rituals were performed, right? In the Rig Veda, in the newer era of the Rig Veda, the non-family works. So this not only proves that the Harappan civilization was Rig Vedic in nature, but it also proves that the Aryan migration theory is false and it's preposterous.
I think Ashwin has a question. Are you able to take it up?
Sure.
Yeah, is this the same Saryu river as that mentioned in the Ramayana and Ayodhya,
No,
or is it a
actually, it's a different Saryu River. It was the river where the Trikshis used to live. Trasadasya and other kings. These were basically Western Ikshwaku kings, who originally dwelled in this region, and from there a branch of them likely migrated eastwards into the Middle Gangetic Plains. Though people have different opinions, Shrikant sir thinks that Shrikant Talagiri, a scholar, he thinks that they migrated from east to west, but I think there is more archaeological evidence indicating that there was an eastward migration from this region to westward, to the east. Because we
so
see
the
archaeological sites, thriving in this region, and they are far older than what we see in the area of Ayodhya.
okay, so you're saying the early Ikshwaku kings might be here, but Ram and the era of Ramayana is after this.
Based on archaeology, yes, that is the conclusion that can be assumed.
Yeah, this is archaeological
After
and
they have
philological.
migrated from this. Okay.
Yeah, I would not say just assume. I think there's more evidence that explains it.
What does Shrikant Talagiri say to justify? Because he says it's from east to west, right?
Well, he completely evades archaeology. So his assumption is that the Ikshwakus originated here in this region, the region of Ayodhya, and from there they migrated to the
Hmm.
west. They settled here. I'm sorry, here in this area.
Hmm. Yep. Okay. So at least
That's it.
based on archaeology right now, the conclusion is that this site is older than
Yeah, all
the.
these sites, ancient sites that you see, Rahman Dheri and multiple sites, right? This is basically the Gomal Bannu basin, right? And river Zob has been identified with Rigvedic Saryu, because if you look at the Rigveda, Saryu is there, Saryu is mentioned there, Gomti is also mentioned there. But the interesting thing is that you see, if you look at the geographical picture, the broader geographical picture, you realize that that these rivers were actually in the west. That's why various scholars such as P.L. Bhargava, Shrikant Talagiri identified these rivers with the western tributaries of Indus.
So if I may ask here, basically an assumption or mapping has been made that assumes that whatever description is there in Rigveda is this Zob river. Let's say, for
Ah,
example, let's say, for example, that identification is challenged, then technically that river could be anywhere else, depending upon what the researcher is able to establish. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, but I think that's highly unlikely. Reason being that there are different pieces of evidence that point out that river was situated in this region. You see, Trasadasyu, who was a Trikshi king, he fought with the Iranians, right, the
Mm.
Dasyus. And we see a clear archaeological division, as I showed in this map, between the Indo-Aryan, Harappan civilization and the Iranian. Let me show this map. Okay. So we see a clear distinction here. We see a different civilization thriving in this region, in the area of Helmand. And this was the Iranian civilization and the Indo-Aryan civilization thriving in the Indus Valley. And Saryu acts as a natural geographical barrier between these two cultures.
Today,
And
this Sarayu.
the kings associated
Mm.
with this river, the Trikshi kings, were actually the ones who fought with these Iranians. So, under no circumstances, Rigvedic Saryu could be this eastern river
Mm.
of this region. You know, this. Can you see the map? Can you see where I'm pointing?
Yeah.
This area, because the Iranians were living in Afghanistan, and we also have references to animals such as camels, uh, you know, which are not found essentially in Uttar Pradesh but in Afghanistan. We have archaeological evidence, we have archaeological evidence, and we also have the evidence from the Rig Veda itself, because it mentions that one of the kings, it mentions in the Danastutis of the 8th mandala that a king named, I'm not getting the name of that king, but he was a Parshu king who
Mm.
donated camels to one of the Rigvedic priests.
And what was the importance of Ushtra in the
Ushtra.
Rigvedic period?
It just tells us that the Indo-Aryan or the Vedic Aryan people were interacting with the Iranians. Because
Okay.
camels are not native to Indus Valley. They're found in
Mm.
Afghanistan and South Central Asia. And
Mm.
they were trading camel, and they were basically donating camels to the Rigvedic seers.
I'm
Rigvedic.
assuming it was used as a beast of burden, perhaps. Was what
Sorry?
were they being used as beast of burden? Like were they being used for transportation? Like what were the primary purpose of camels in the Iranian?
Yeah, most likely for transportation. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's reasonable to think that they were uh, exported, they were imported for transportation. Okay. So yeah, so I made this map. I identified various, you know, geographical this thing, various regional centers of the Harappan civilization with the tribes. Like we have this eastern domain of the Harappan civilization. If you look at the map of the Indus Valley civilization, it's again not static. You do see the same pottery across Sindh, Punjab, Balochistan, and the area of Haryana. But the thing is that we do find regional variations in the mature Harappan civilization itself. So based on that, on those regional variations, I identified these regional variations with various Rigvedic era tribe, with various Vedic tribe. Like for instance, we see eastern domain of the Harappan civilization. I haven't marked it actually, so let me point it out.
Mhm.
I'm using this cursor, right?
Yeah, we
I
can
hope
see.
it's visible. Okay. So these sites, Kalibangan, Ganveri Wala, Alamgirpur, Rakhi Gadi, Kalibangan, and Rupar. So these cluster into the eastern domain of the mature Harappan civilization. I identified these people with the Purus, who were primarily the Vedic people, and the Anavas who are mentioned in the Rig Veda. I've identified them with the western, the Harappa domain of the Indus Valley civilization, because you see a distinct form of the Harappan pottery here in this area, in Vainival and Harappa, in this whole area. And then the Trikshis, I have identified them with the northwestern domain of the Harappan civilization. You know, the area of Rahman, Dheri, and Nausharo. And then there is
So
southern domain. We do not know exactly because I don't think any tribes are mentioned there. We don't find any direct references to tribes which were dwelling in the area of Sindh and Gujarat. So that's why there's a question mark. So Sindhu tribe, that was likely the tribe which dwelt in that region. Then various other kingdoms like Anartha, and yes, you can notice that the color of Gujarat, of Saurashtra, is slightly different from the color of rest of the region. Can you notice that? The pottery culture which we find in this region was distinct from rest of the region. It was similar to the pottery of this culture. Wait a minute. the Aharbanis culture. But this was also the Indo-Aryan culture. They were also speaking the languages which were closely related to the Vedic language.
Hmm.
So basically, you imagine it like a tree. You early have this culture, the early Indo-Iranian culture. Then the Iranians and the Nuristani branched off first. These people branching off little later, the Yadus and Turvasus from this region, from this area of Saraswati Sindhu area, right? And then the Vedic Aryans becoming dominant in the whole region with the political successes of King Sudas, Trasadasya and other kings such as Somaka and Sahadeva, who are mentioned in the Rigveda. That's what the picture is.
So it's interesting. So you say in the Rigveda, Sahadeva specifically mentioned, but
Yeah, Somaka and Sahadeva.
do you have references to anyone else that we know from the Mahabharata character?
No, this is not related to Mahabharata. These people lived before the Mahabharata because they are mentioned in the Rig Veda. They are
Hmm.
mentioned in the older portions of the Rig Veda, right? Which
But what is the
definitely
reference?
predate.
So what is the
Uh,
reference?
I mean, they actually fought with the Iranians. They fought with the Iranian king Ishtasva, who probably lived in this region,
Mhm.
the Helmand region, and he was actually the patron king of Zoroaster. Zoroaster was the one who declared that devas shouldn't be worshipped. They are malevolent, they are negative beings, and we shouldn't worship them. That's why you see that devas, the meaning of the word deva in Iranian language is devils, right?
Yeah.
And Ashura is deities in their
Mhm.
language, in their culture. So this distinction likely happened during Zoroaster's time period. So yeah, they fought this war, and it is mentioned in the Rig Veda, in the first mandal of the Rig Veda, that uh, this king Somaka Sahadeva and the other king Bhayaman, Ridrashva, and Ambrish. These were the five kings. It was their coalition which fought with the Iranians. They crossed River Saryu and vanquished King Vishtaspa, who was the patron of Zoroaster. And it is mentioned in the Avesta also, because in Avesta, these people, the Vedic people, are referred as Turya, right? So it is clearly mentioned that Zoroaster was actually stabbed to death by the Turyas or by the Vedic Aryans. So we can assume, we can conclude that the Vedic Aryans were living here, the Iranians were here, and the Vedic Aryans invaded the Iranian territories, subjugating the Iranians and eventually killing their leader. And it also tells us one thing. Look, people often, even our prime minister says that India never invaded any country past. I think that's untrue. We also invaded. We were like other civilizations, other great civilizations that were invading, that were interacting, and interacting with other cultures. We were also influencing other cultures.
And I think that myth started because of Ashoka supposedly becoming Buddhist, but I think now we know that Ashoka was already Buddhist when he attacked Kalinga. So yeah, I think that narrative is not entirely true.
Shown as a weak civilization, as a civilization which was unconcerned about things happening outside the subcontinent, and we were always invaded. We never invaded other cultures. It's untrue. We also invaded. We also influenced the world. You see, that's
Yeah, we cannot say that India never invaded others. Of course,
yeah.
in a lot of stories, we see that there is something called as Chakravartitva and Ashwamedha Yaga, which basically is ruling over all other countries.
The population that inhabited Iran and India, they were basically the same people. They were not genetically distinct. And we also see that the F haplogroup likely originated in the Indian subcontinent, and from there it migrated to different parts of the world. But that's something impertinent to Vedic and the Bronze Age Indology, because we are discussing about things which happened in the recent times in the Bronze Age, for which we have documented evidence. So the Turvasus also mentioned as Vrishivans in the sixth mandal of the Rig Veda. So these people were living east of the Drishadvati river, which is this, and these people were inner Indo-Aryans. You can say they were speaking languages which did not descend from the Vedic language, but it was actually the sister language of the Vedic language. And we find references to various sub-tribes which were living in this region, and Talagiri assumes them to be the sub-tribes of the Turvasus. So we have references to the Aja Shigrus, the Vrichivans. I haven't mentioned the Vrichivans here, and possibly the Kikatas. The Kikatas were basically the predecessors of the Magadhan people, as per Yaskacharya.
According to Yaska. So this is
Yeah,
from the Nirukta that we are saying that
yeah, from Nirupta. So,
Kikatas became the founders of Magadha.
yeah. So this is the map of the late Harappan civilization after the decline of the mature Harappan civilization. This essentially shows late Harappan sites from 19 after 1900 BCE. So you see a gradual shift towards the Gangetic plains, right? You can see most of the sites concentrated in this region, and we see a sharp decline in the sites which were actually present in this region. Even Mohenjo-daro and various other sites, they declined. So we see rapid deurbanization across the Indus-Saraswati plains, and even in Vedic texts we see the shift, the geographical shift. If you look at the Rigvedic geography, it is centered in this region. In early Rigveda, it's limited to the Saraswati Drishadvati region, but in New Rigveda, it's spread across this vast region. We also find references to seafaring maritime activities, indicating that Sindh and Gujarat were also an imperative part of the Rigvedic civilization. But post the Harappan collapse, the civilization shifted eastwards. And this also reflects in the Vedic texts. Because if you look at the geography of the Yajurveda and Atharvaveda, you will find references to all these Gangetic kingdoms. You'll find references to Kuru, you'll find references to Panchal, Magad, Videha, which was founded by Videg Mathava, by the way, who migrated from Saraswati region. By the way, this is an interesting thing mentioned in the Yajurveda. Yajurveda says that Videha kingdom, the home kingdom of Masita, was actually founded by Videg Mathava, who initially lived in the area of river Saraswati, this area, the Saraswati Sindhu region. And from there, he migrated to Nadan Bihar, the area of Nadan Bihar, and founded the kingdom of Videha, which was named after Videga Mathava. So we see this eastward shift, not only in the texts, not only in the Vedic texts, but also archaeologically.
Hmm. I know, especially when the Aryan invasion theory and Aryan migration theory was the norm, and even to largely now, I believe in India, the issue with our history is that we are classifying it as two urbanization periods. So there is first urbanization, which is considered during the IVC, or as we say, the Saraswati civilization. And then the second urbanization is when you have the Ganga Valley and the other regions, right? And
That's happening around 600 BC. Yeah.
correct. And that's when you have the Mahajanapadas being mapped, and you have Buddhism. So in the past, with the Aryan invasion theory, it worked very well because it was like, there was a different group of people. That was the urbanization. Then they were defeated by these invaders, and then their urbanization starts from 600 BC. The problem with that narrative is that it literally makes Indian culture start from 600 BC, because in a sense, the first urbanization becomes something which is alien to most of us. But with this kind of narrative that, as you are showing us with the maps,
Exactly.
the migration is gradual. So it's not like an abrupt change from one urbanization to another. So do you see
Exactly.
a possibility, or do you see archaeologists beginning to argue for not two urbanizations, but a continuous urbanization, which would actually help link both the 600 BC period with the 3000, 4000 BC, whatever cultures that we have? What
They
are your thoughts on
strongly,
this?
they strongly do. Actually, the current research works prove otherwise. They show that the so-called second urbanization started likely around 1200 BCE, because we find various sites in this region, Hastinapur being one of them, Ahishatra basically, Ahishatra and Atranji Khera. We find evidence of grid town, the same thing that we see in the mature Harappan phase.
Hmm.
We find the evidence of urbanized or well-organized towns, semi-urbanized towns in this region dating back to 1200 BCE, to the period of painted graveware culture. And let me tell you that the painted graveware culture, as per the recent studies, particularly from 2013 onwards, prove that the painted graveyard culture predates the so-called Aryan migration, because they say that the Aryan migration happened around 1500 BCE, and we are finding evidence of painted graveyard settlements dating back to 2300 BCE, which again debunks the Aryan migration theory and proves that there was this gradual migration happening likely from the Indus Saraswati region. And the second, as far as the second urbanization is concerned, it started likely around 1300 BCE, because the painted graveyard culture itself shows evidence of Harappan-like settlements. Though they were not as advanced as the Harappan settlements, but they were quite reminiscent of how Harappan cities were like. Their layout, the grid pattern is reminiscent of how of the Harappan grid.
What is used to explain this supposed deterioration in technology compared to the earlier settlements along Saraswati? Is it just a case of population not being as large, therefore less centralization, or what is your
Exactly. It's,
thought
it's
here?
it's because of less centralization. As I mentioned, that this is the picture. In this picture, you can see that the whole culture was integrated. It was, one can say it was centralized. Centralized is not the right term, but integrated is the right term, which describes the archaeological and the cultural scenario of the mature Harappan civilization. And in the late Harappan civilization, you see decentralization, right? So you are right. So there was disintegration of the vast Harappan culture, which led to the deterioration.
Now, what is the supposed reason for this deterioration? Because earlier I know this theory was that the Indus Valley civilization, they had no army, they had no defense, they were so peace loving, and then the invaders came and then
Exactly.
destroyed. I mean, that was a very neat narrative that fit very well with Aryan invasion theory. But now we know that's not true. Now we know that there was a citadel as well.
Unfortunately, the mainstream current theory is the same, and that can't be changed because they are obstinate. They are not in a position to reassess everything, because that will challenge their pre-existing models. The best explanation to this is that the river Saraswati, this the trajectory that you can see on this map. This river dried around 2000 to around 1900 BCE
It
due to
dried.
lack of it declined,
Mm.
and it happened due to the lack of rainfall. And the interesting thing is that we also have the reference to a drought due to lack of rainfall in the Rigveda itself. In the 10th mandala of the Rigveda, we find a hymn which was composed by Devaki, who was Shantanu, Bhishma Pitama's father. Shantanu's elder brother, who composed this hymn. And in this hymn, King Shantanu is praying to Lord Indra for rainfall. And it was likely composed around 1900 BC itself, because that was the time period when when this particular region saw a major drought, a major decline in the rainfall, which resulted in the decline of River Saraswati and eventually the decline of the massive Indus Valley civilization that affected every aspect of the Harappan civilization, its trade, its politics, everything. Likely affected every aspect of it, which resulted in the disintegration of the Indus Valley civilization. As a result, various regional cultures emerged, such as the late Harappan culture, the cemetery Harappan culture in this region of Punjab, where I marked Anuvahika, the Bara culture. It's not written on this map. The late Harappan culture, the purple one, you can see it here, where I marked Kuru. Then in Panchal, you already had the OCP culture. That's different. That was native to the Gangetic plains, right? And in Gujarat, you see the Jhukar uh, culture, right? Sorry, the late Sorat culture and the Jhukar culture in the area of Sindh. So this disintegration happened primarily because of the drying of Saraswati.
And again, just curious. So, just as the Saraswati was drying up, was it just a very localized phenomenon due to El Nino, probably of that time, or do we also see similar impact on the Iranian side of things during this 1900 BC period?
Iranian side was okay. So the picture is
Flourishing.
different. Iranian side, and actually, you know, by that time, Iranians actually separated.
Hmm.
They had their own independent civilization, which was
Yeah.
thriving in this
Okay,
area.
then
I haven't covered the Iranian thing because my
yeah,
whole focus is on the
yeah,
Indo-Aryan
thank you.
thing. Uh, the Indic thing. I think I should start using the word Indic instead of Indo-Aryan, but it's so much there that I can't do that. I don't have the audacity to, fully replace the terminologies. So they were their civilization was thriving in this region, the Bactria Margiana archaeological
Mm,
complex. I haven't kept that map here. They were in contact with us, but they were not a part of our, uh, you know, broader cultural civilization, of our civilization,
no, no.
because we were evolving differently. They were
My
evolving.
curiosity comes more from the fact that, um, given that there was a decline in the Indus side, I'm curious what is going on the Iranian side. Were they also facing similar drought, or why did they not take advantage of this weakness for whatsoever reason? So it's just idle curiosity, nothing more.
I think because at that point of time they were focusing on colonizing Central Asia, the whole area of the steppes, and
Hmm.
they likely tried to invade, but it is possible. We do not know; it's nowhere recorded. Though maybe they occupied the territories of Gandhar and Punjab, because we do not see, as you can see in this map, the
Hmm.
symmetry Harappan culture, the golden sites, the golden dots, right? They are
Hmm.
concentrated in this region. This is late Harappan Harappa site, and other related site.
Hmm.
We do not find enough sites in this region, so it is likely that they invaded and occupied certain sites. And it was also possible that this brought the first wave of steppe ancestry which is found in modern Indians.
Hmm.
But they did not bring the Vedic culture,
Right.
right? We know Vedic culture is much older than that. So it is possible, but the problem is we do not have any philological, we do not have any literary evidence for that, strong literary evidence for that. But it is likely.
All right. Again, thank you for your time, and this was definitely a very interesting session. I hope this uh, can continue. Maybe I know you have maps covering other areas as well. So if you have the time, would love to see you back
Well, I have
covering a
one map from Maharashtra I forgot to share.
yeah.
So this is basically my latest map. This is on the Jorve culture of Maharashtra. So this essentially captures the earliest people of Maharashtra who lived in that region, the Indo-Aryan speakers of Maharashtra who spoke languages that were ancestral to Maharashtri Prakrit,
Mhm.
uh, that was spoken in Maharashtra and in other regions. So yeah, so I've covered various Chalcolithic, I mean Bronze Age sites of this
Mm,
region, such as Jorve, Daimabad, Paitan, Inamgaon, etc. And their
again,
culture was quite similar to the Vedic culture. It was,
mm,
you can say, the sister culture of the Vedic culture.
right?
Yeah, this is south of Narmada. Yeah, Narmada Tapi,
Mhm.
mostly south of Tapi. And the significance of this culture is it explains various different Indo-Aryan cultures. Now, again, this is only an anthropological thing. Um, various different Deccan, Indo-Aryan Deccan kingdoms such as Ashmaka, Vidarbha, Mulaka, and Kuntal. It's not mentioned here,
Mm,
but their migration and their civilization. So South India Neolithic was the culture of the Dravidians who already migrated from the Gujarat and settled in
mm,
peninsular India. Alright.
okay.
So I would love to know your perspective also, like you mentioned about your traditional ideas. I want to see
Mm.
whether these are compatible with, you know, the anthropological studies or not, or how we can reconcile.
Yeah, I think that will have to be a ongoing effort how we reconcile, because obviously the dates are quite different, right? Um, I know on one hand, in archaeology itself, the dates have changed quite a bit. Like when I was studying in school, some of the starting point dates for Harappan civilization was quite different from what we now know. So I'm obviously hopeful that things continue to evolve and we are able to get more evidence which helps bridge that gap. But maybe that discussion can be done in a different session, I think, because we need to look into what the texts say, how we're matching that with what we see here. I think this itself must be pretty interesting for anyone who's just getting started. So thank you, Kanishk, for your time today.
Thank you, Varunji. Thank you for having me here.
And yeah, like I said, I hope this can be done again for other maps. I know you cover a lot of maps, so looking
Sure.
forward to that. Okay, Thank you all. Ram Ram.
Thank you, Kanishk. It was very informative. Gave a
Thank
lot
you
to
so
think
much.
about.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.